Greetings, everyone. I am very excited to be back in conversation with my friend Jason engledoe from South Africa. We've been in conversation a long time ago, Jason, but you've always stayed very close to my heart, and I'm glad that we can be back in conversation. And today, our focus will be on healing and ancestral healing. But let me just briefly introduce you, and then we'll get into our conversation.
Right. Thanks, Heather.
Jason is an eco-social designer. I love that description. A facilitator and a certified ancestral medicine practitioner. He works with individuals, groups, leaders, facilitators, coaches with a vision for eco-social regeneration. And what I want to say is that I really see you, Jason, as a profound healer on a path of consciousness and healing within yourself to then support others in healing, in coming into right relationship. And you really understand the importance of that healing on the individual level, the group level, the community level, the collective level, and how we also can come into right relationship with the land and with our ancestral lineage and with our planet Earth. So you really have a very, from my perspective, deep and sophisticated understanding of this healing that we need to do to move into new paradigms, to move into higher consciousness. So I'd love to just be in this conversation in an organic way with you. But
Yeah.
I would love it if, as you do often in your sessions, you could open us up by calling in your ancestors and the wisdom of your ancestors to guide us in this conversation.
Sure. Sure. Thank you. Thanks so much, Heather. I'm honored to be part of this community again and making a contribution from the unique lands here in Kamisa, the land of sweet waters for all, now known as the Cape. Um, Thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna say a few words and so that we can be a little bit more intentional about what we're doing here. Yeah. Good. Hallo. Hallo vir die inheemse mense van die land, die San en die Kokon. Hallo. Ek vra asseblief dat my gesonde welvoorouers naby my is om my mooi te adviseer, dat ek u betekenisse kan goed verstaan met my liggaam en my hart en my siel. Kaigangans, calling on the elevated wise and well ancestors of mine and spirit allies who back my life to please draw close at this time. We acknowledge the ancestors of place and the spirits of the land here in Kamisa, the traditional lands of the Bushmen and women, now known as Cape Town in South Africa. Together with my people, we warmly welcome the elevated ancestors and spirit guides and spirit allies of Heather Ainsworth and all those who are in attendance watching later to please draw close at this time. We acknowledge the ancestors of place and the spirits of the land where Heather is seated there on Turtle Island, now known as the United States of America, and the traditional lands there. And we acknowledge the first peoples there and all the lands of all the people who are dialing in later on. May our elevated ones harmonize well in this conversation and exploration. May the winds of change continue to blow. May the wood feed the fires that burn in our hearts. May the big earth continue to hold and nourish us. May the metals strengthen our resolve to bring our good work into the world. And may the waters wash away anything that is unnecessary. Kaigangans, terima kasih, dhanyavad, inkosi, shubhaki, gurumaragat, danki, merci, Klaus, 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 Klaus. And just wanting to make a space silently for anyone who is, dialing in. If you would like to add anything in your own way, just to take a moment for that. Thank you.
Mm. Blessed be. Thank you,
Yeah.
Jason.
Thank you, Heather. Thanks for this opportunity. My partner Wendy and I are big fans of the work that you do and the folks that you have on the calls. It's always been good medicine for us, and as often as I can, I tell folks about your channel and the work that you're doing in the world so courageously. So thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Thank you. And before we dive into our conversations, Jason, you and I were talking before we got on the recording about, your opening that prayer and opening this sacred space for us to be in conversation together, guided by those wise ones from our ancestral lineage and our spirit guides, who I also call in anytime before I do any work in my life.
Lovely.
You speak from different languages as part of that is honoring the complexity of your own ancestral lineage. Can you talk some about that?
How much time do we have, Heather? Because I might be here. We might be here for a while. I've got a rich diversity of ancestors, which I'm really, really proud of and honor. Let us welcome the wisdom of Ludwig Wittgenstein in this moment, who says the limits of our language are the limits of our world. I really love that quote because I don't think he's only talking about, languages like some of the languages that you might have heard me saying during my prayer. But we might speak about other ways of encoding and decoding wisdom. I think he might also be speaking about. And that might be, the language of the plants, the language of the earth, the language of the waters, etc. But so yeah, 2/3 of my ancestors are settler colonialists from Europe. If you know the history of South Africa, you might understand the rich cultural heritage of this place and this lands. The first peoples here are the Bushmen and Bushwomen. This is not often acknowledged. By making an attempt to say some words of folks who were brought, bodies who were brought in chattel slavery from Southeast Asian region. I have ancestors in the Andean region and in Micronesia. And by just saying whether the pronunciation is accurate or not, but I think it's quite a gesture in paying homage to the diversity of my people, the very people who gave me life. And in that simple way that I can say and that can be witnessed, because this is the way that I start my ancestral healing sessions, then this is a good thing. I'm also intentional about setting a ritual container. We don't, a ritual doesn't have to be a grand gesture. We don't have to build big shrines or altars. Having coffee is also a ritual. It's also a rhythm that we follow. So I'm intentional about who I bring close to me and invite into this space when we have a conversation like we are now. Otherwise, some of us can be a little bit too porous And we might invite those unconsciously who shouldn't really be in this space. And so I'm intentional about that. I hope that answers the question. Yeah.
Well, my thoughts are going in multiple directions, Jason, but one thing you and I both really feel strongly about is that importance of a sacred and safe container for
Yes.
healing work, for spiritual work, for uh, the process that we're in this time of transition. And I feel with you that that is so important. And it, as you're saying, it doesn't have to be complex, and it doesn't at all need to be part of any formal religious tradition. For me,
Yeah.
a crucial part of my ritual and ceremony is working with the ancient medicine wheel, and
Mm,
that way in
mm,
which it is honoring the directions, which are honoring all the elements and all of the energies of the life around us. And then ultimately, how we come to center, how we come into alignment with our soul self, how we come into alignment with the earth and sky and all that is,
yeah.
so that I'm then living and working from that centered place in that container of the medicine wheel. And
Mm,
I think, as you're saying, that's really coming out of ancient wisdom and indigenous wisdom about how do we really be conscious of those energies within us and around us and how we are in relationship with them.
yeah. Yeah. That's wonderful, Heather. I must say, just checking in with my body, even now, after I say those few words and I'm intentional about who I call close, I feel a lot more grounded. And I'd shared with you that was a bit of a bumpy week. And there was some agitation in the system, let's call it that. And I wasn't really sure that I was going to make this time, but I wanted to honor our time. I wanted to honor this. I see it as an opportunity. I see it as an opportunity for us to connect across the ocean. There's only an ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, between us and other folks who are dialing in here, because I think it's important at this time to try to understand each other a little bit more. And in that way, we understand ourselves a little bit more. And there's just something in the bio that was important that was omitted, and that's okay. But I want to name it. Besides the vision that I have of eco-social regeneration, the mission that I follow of how to get to that vision is healing to all and harm to none. That's really, really, really important to name. And I also want to name here that what we're doing here in this conversation and exploration, from my perspective, we are not gesturing towards gaining consensus. That's not what we're doing here. We are not looking for resolution. This is a space for good questions. That questions might guide us into this new paradigm, into this new unfolding, into this space of rapid change. As Heraclitus says, it's in my email signature, the only constant is change. And kind of looping in the words that I'd shared earlier, I can be conscious about how I meet that change or not. And so I'd also said, to Heather when we spoke just last week and just before this call, as an Enneagram 1, the strict perfectionist, but I prefer the languaging of the meticulous observer. It feels a little gentler. It's a little bit hard for me to let go of the reins. It's a little bit hard for me to just let the river flow as it needs to flow, and to be an observer of the river, an active participant. We can frolic in the river together, but the river knows where it needs to go. And that can feel a little bit vulnerable when perfectionism is close by and going, hey, you don't want to make a fool of yourself. Jason, Wendy has sorry, Heather, Wendy's also here in spirit, my life partner. That's wonderful. Come too. Heather has a wonderful intelligent, sensitive viewership based on the comments that I see on your channel. And I want to honor that by showing up in the right way. And sometimes it's something that I'm experimenting with, is to let go. And so I didn't know that I was going to make this call, if I was going to perhaps cancel. I couldn't do that to my older sister, Heather. And but I often say to my clients that we need to embrace dissonance and challenge and adversity. Robert Fritz, in his model on change, speaks about dissonance being a process, part of the creative process.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and he says, you know, whatever your vision is, make sure that you put perforated edges around the vision, because it might look very different once we get there. And when we do the perforated line around that vision, we also make space for the wild ideas to manifest, for the magic to come in. And oftentimes we want it to be a straight line, but sometimes we need to move like crabs. We need to move sideways, and sometimes we need to move back in order to get a different perspective to get to that vision. And so, I might not always be answering the question in a straightforward way, and never mind if it sounds a little bit cryptic because maybe it's intended to be so. I appreciate the language of metaphor. And sometimes when we glance at things directly head on, we don't always understand. But when we look at it from a different perspective, the penny of wisdom drops sometimes a little bit more easily.
Beautifully said, Jason. And I love your image of the river. It reminds me of that incredible Hopi prophecy about this time, that we need to let go of the shore, not cling to that false sense of security, but be in the river. Let ourselves be in the current, not knowing where it's going to carry us, but trusting in the river. And looking around us to see who else is in the current with us. So I definitely feel in the current with you, Jason. And part of what I respect about you too is, well, you in your own embodiment are holding such diversity in terms of your integration of your ancestral lineage, that you have European ancestors who were colonizers. You have ancient indigenous ancestors who lived in close connection with the land there in Cape Town. And you're finding that way of healing and integrating that diversity within yourself, which from my perspective is some of what supports you in helping us collectively look at how we can see each other in our diversity and find that unity consciousness, that way in which we remember that we're all interconnected, but not from a place of homogeneity, but from a place of diversity. So, part of what I respect in you, Jason, is I see you as a healer, a teacher, a guide, because you're a liminal one. You don't fit any clear category or box conventionally. You have this ability to hold your own diversity and to see the complexity of who we each are, and to hold space for that. That from my perspective, we have to really do that inner healing and honor all that diversity and complexity in who we are, to then emanate that healing, to be in right relationship with others.
There's so much to say about that, Heather. There's so much, and we might have to do another call. Again, the metaphor of water, and I'm sticking onto the thread And it's lovely that you've introduced the Hopi prophecy because it's in my field of awareness also, and I see that as an invitation. Um, but again, this water as someone who I respect dearly, Lee Little Dragon, Li Xiaolong, more commonly known as Bruce Lee, speaks about this beautiful quote where he says, "Be water, my friend. When you pour water into the cup, it becomes the cup. When you pour water into a vase, it becomes the vase. Be water." And we're all water, you know. Apparently, our bodies. I'm not very intellectual or anything like that. Your viewers are probably a lot smarter than I am, but apparently, these bodies are made up of like 70% water. And if we engage each other from that perspective, we are a lot similar than we are different. And I would like to offer um, a little home play, perhaps, if someone's interested, because the ancestors are not just the remembered names. I would like to invite folks to go and check out what is science telling us that happened around about 65,000 to 90,000 years ago. People were moving from a land, and these ones are ancestors of modern humans, Homo sapiens, apologies. And I wonder what you might discover, how truly connected we are. Yeah, but we sometimes forget. Um, I've been saying recently to folks with my work that I specialize in with the different modalities that I use to work with folks of the diaspora, the African diaspora, specifically sub-Saharan Africa. People who have a connection to this land. It doesn't have to be South Africans only, but people who have ancestors of affinity through their connection of time spent on this land with these people and these waters and this biota, this ecosystem. Um, to work with this label, a BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, people of culture. Um, but I will never turn anyone away. And there's this UC Berkeley has the Othering and Belonging Institute, and I think some of the problems and challenges we face nowadays is because of this extreme individualism and because of polarization, right and wrong. That's what I was alluding to at the start of the conversation. We are not looking for consensus here. But I can't turn anyone away who knocks on my door because I am many of those people, even if they don't fit that category. I am them on a blood, bone, and DNA level because of the diversity of my own ancestry. That affords me, it's rugby season here in South Africa, and we are 4 times world champions. And I want to name the Springboks for a couple of reasons. One, Sia Khaleesi is the captain. He's often called the captain's captain. And in his book, Rise, which I highly recommend, he speaks about coming from very humble beginnings and how he has risen to be the captain that he is today. And the Springboks, I feel, as a sports fraternity, are doing amazing things because they are playing for our nation. And they are aware of the challenges that we face because of our diversity, but they are also aware of the strengths and gifts and resiliencies we hold because of our diversity, including the head coach, Rassie Erasmus. And in his book, he speaks about mixed ancestry. And he speaks about the potential of those who have mixed ancestry to be bridges. because they hold to use sometimes in an intentional way now, use the language of duality to perhaps underscore a point because they hold in their bodies both black and white. And this ability in the Othering and Belonging Institute, they refer to it as bridging, to be intentional about getting close to that which we might have othered or that which we might other consciously and unconsciously in other people.
Beautiful. I mean, there's so much wisdom in what you're saying, Jason. And circling back to this whole theme in our conversation of water, I also just want to honor Veda Austin's work and her increasing awareness of how water holds the memories of the land, of our ancestors, of our own experiences. And we all are made of water. We all are interconnected with the waters, the living waters that are, I think, holding that cosmic consciousness that is then within us and can help us to see each other in new ways, deeper ways. And part of what you're also sharing that I think is so important, I truly believe it is critical that we do understand our human history from this larger perspective. I mean, you and I have talked some about Bynum's book, The African Unconscious, and how we all have evolved ultimately from those human origins and then spread across the globe. But that we need to reconnect with those origins and those, he describes it as the root of our mysticism and ultimately of our psychology. Brilliant book. I'll put the link below. But it also, I think, as we look at that larger trajectory of our human history, we need to remember that we've come out of a deep sense of community, of connection to the land, to this past 5,000 years that has been, I think, a time of exploring a sense of separation, differentiation, that's led to us also an exploration of disconnection, that's led to division and polarization. There's a whole shadow aspect of that that has led us to this point where we're in danger of destroying each other and the planet. But if we can see that that was an effort to explore our individuality and our differentness, to bring it back into connection, to bring it back into this Aquarian understanding of honoring our diversity, but coming back to that memory that we're all from the same origins, we're all a part of the oneness of all that is, then it can so enrich us in moving into a new world and a new understanding of community.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, my body's tingling, you know. Yes, 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 and beautifully put. And not just the waters, but the earth is our oldest ancestor. It's funny how we forget. My URL for my website is called unityandyou.com. It celebrates the interconnectedness as we've just been speaking about, and it also makes space for us as an individual and our unique contribution to that collective. It celebrates both and. Yeah. For some reason, I'm just silent for a moment because there's sadness and grief around the fighting and the conflict we see in the world. And here in the West, we don't. In my culture, we don't have really a framework to process grief and sadness with dignity. Um, it is often frowned upon, and this is what I love about the ancestral healing framework. It offers a framework to engage with the grief and sadness of the truth of what has also been happening, which can also feel overwhelming. But I wonder if we can try on the stance, and this might sound a little bit edgy, that all of that destruction is happened because that's the truth of it. It has happened in order for us to come here and to move forward in a different way. It's hard sometimes when I think about what all of my people, our people, ancestors have been through and the suffering that they've gone through. But I also have a hope that before it's my time to transition, that perhaps we will talk less about intergenerational trauma and more about intergenerational wisdom.
Mm.
And when we turn to the grief and the sadness of what has happened, because that's a space, because the ancestors elevate through our tears, through processing the gift, the grief and the sadness. That's how we make space to move that which we also carry epigenetically, to make space for the light, so that that which we carry epigenetically, i.e. the gifts and resiliencies of our people, can come forward in a more pronounced way. And the only way out is in and through. And we can't do it alone. We have to do it in community. And even if there are some of you who might live as one person in an apartment or a house, you're never alone. Your people are with you. Your elevated ancestors are supporting you, whether you know it or not. Why not let us be a little bit conscious about it, about how we relate with the earth? If you're living alone, get a plant, grow some mint. It's one of the easiest plants to grow. And it's one of the easiest plants to propagate. Cut the stem off, make sure that it's, 15 centimeters, pop it in a glass in some water, let it sprout roots, and then share that with someone else who also feels lonely, so that you can say, hey, there are so many allies who are always with us, and we just need to develop the awareness of that truth. If that makes sense, I'm not sure.
Jason, I think this is so important, because what you're really describing too is not only how we can come back into right connection, right relationship with each other in community, but to remember what the ancient cultures and indigenous people always knew, that the spirits of our ancestors are always around us, always with us, and
Yes.
that we have this capacity when we come back into our hearts and get out of our minds, which can lead to those ways that we disconnect from each other and from the earth. When we come back into our hearts, we can communicate and commune with the plants, with the animals, with the water, with the earth, with the spirits of our ancestors, with our spirit guides. We're never alone.
Yeah.
As you said, we're surrounded by allies and helpers. And I do believe in this time of transition into the Aquarian age, the veils between the worlds are thinning, and we are being called to awaken and remember who we are and what we're truly capable of.
mm,
which allows us to melt that false sense of separation and
mm.
disconnection, to come home again to the fullness of our relationships with everything around us.
I'm smiling because this is the way that my body responds when I hear truth. uh, there's much to be said about that. You know, a potential client for ancestral healing who works in sustainability, a very smart one. Um, she asked me, you know, how long is this ancestral work going to take? You know, because us in modernity, you know, we like linear stuff. We like to do an intervention and it ends there. And now we get a certificate of completion, and now we know that thing. Where has the time and dedication toward mastery gone?
Mm.
And I said to her, it's going to happen for the rest of your life, whether you're conscious about it or not. You may as well be conscious about it and let it help you. Let it help your life and let it help the life of your children and your offspring and the future generations to come. You, for some reason, not only the veil that is thinning, but time works in a strange way. It's quite mushy and squishy. And when we can heal what has happened in the past by how we show up in the present and engage the wisdom of what has happened in the past that our ancestors have shown us, again, on a blood, bone, and DNA level, and also through books and history and story. And when we engage with those troubles in a conscious way, in community, with our elevated ancestors supporting us, because they do the heavy lifting. Let us not try to do the heavy lifting there. Don't do that. It might burn out your nervous system. I've tried. Don't do that. And in that way, we change the future for the generations to come. You know, bringing the beautiful wisdom, if I may, with respect. I don't speak for any groups. I only speak from the perspective of the lessons taught to me by my own people. And I'm sharing the conversations that I've been having with them. I'm sharing it here. And so we can't reach consensus because we all have our own beautiful people and medicines that we inherit. And the Hopi prophecy. You know, recently I've made an attempt to connect with people who are similarly melanated as I am, because I've been asking people this question recently. If a child were to ask you, which leader currently living, the context was in South Africa, but I'd be interested to ask people on other lands. If they wanted to ask you which living person's principles and ethics they might aspire to, who would it be? And it's been very difficult to get a response.
Mm.
It's oftentimes the question is followed by deafening silence.
Mm.
And so I've tried to make contact with people, PhDs and authors, and writing some amazing works that have informed my path and my journey, and that has emboldened me with my work. And I've written and I said, you know, I've just released my website. I've published my website, designed a website. This is some of the work that I'm doing. The community is saying there's some good feedback that something's working here, something's happening. Um, I appreciate the work that you put out in the world, and it goes a little contrary to the dominant narrative. And we can only reach the truth once we touch different perspectives, and sometimes perspectives that are very different to what we're used to. And I've said, if you ever, in my neck of the woods, I'd love to buy you a tea or a coffee. I'd love to connect. Um, and I'd love to put a link on my website to your work, because I think the world should be reading about what you're writing. And the response has not been forthcoming. And I'll be honest, it's been tender for me to not get a response at all. And I got out a couple of worksheets, Byron Katie's The Work, and I did some self-inquiry. Because it's so quick to other. But when I asked my people to bring me some wisdom around this, how can I work with the tenderness here? Because perhaps in a previous call, Heather, I'd set up a racial affinity group for mixed ancestry members. The work is so important to heal from the 400 years of brutal apartheid. Apartheid, what didn't only start in 1948 with the Nationalist Party in South Africa. And I asked two elder men if my dad was still embodied. Dad, that's going to be you, but he's not. And so I asked these others, and they weren't. They said, yes, send me the information, but they didn't show up. And I'm learning to meet that with compassion, because it's so quick to other and say, why not? And this is your duty and this is your right. But and when I asked my people to bring me some wisdom, my elevated ancestors, I came across, like, I heard the Hopi prophecy. And some of the things that I take from that wisdom that moves me is the time for the lone wolf is over. Do not look outside of yourself for a leader.
Yes. Yes.
And we are the ones we've been waiting for.
Yes.
And then it feels a little bit easier. Then I'm like, okay. And just like this call, Heather, of allowing the water and the conversation and the energy to go where it needs to go, can feel a little bit vulnerable when we've always been taught that you need to control and you need to make things happen. But we don't need to know the way. Yeah, the way knows the way.
Well, and it is breaking from that need for control, but it's also, as you said, breaking from that pattern of giving our power away to those who are in positions of leadership or authority,
Yes.
and really taking to heart that Hopi prophecy. We are the ones that we've been waiting for. How do we become those people that we want to look up to? How do we emanate that healing and love in the world and empower each other? And when you first brought that up, Jason, actually someone who came to mind for me is Desmond Tutu, who Black South African, who was so critical in helping heal the polarization there in South Africa with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and putting people in rooms together to tell their stories, the perpetrators and the victims, and to see the complexity of that there is no clear division between victims and perpetrators. We're all carrying trauma, and we're all prone to perpetuating that in some way. And he was very powerful influence in my life, because he often came to the community that I was in when I was in Southern California, and spoke there, and so emanated this energy of love and joy in the midst of his willingness to be with people in their suffering. And yet there was something so powerful in that model of let's sit together and actually hear each other, tell our stories, be willing to, as you said, not other
Mm.
the people around us, but actually listen to each other from our hearts and let whatever is going to unfold from there.
Yeah.
And it is, to me, from an astrological perspective, that energy of Cheroklo, that capacity to be empathically present, to open our hearts, to hear each other, to feel all that we're feeling, to hear all that the other person is feeling, and hold space for that.
Yeah. May he continue to journey well, the arch, who at UWC, the University of the Western Cape, which is an institution for mixed ancestry bodies here in the Western Cape, South Africa, who whispered, I am also mixed ancestry. There are some others, people that we know well. Nelson Mandela said something similar because of his shared ancestry with the first peoples here, not only Xhosa, Nguni people, but also Bushmen and Bushwomen, also known as Khoisan, but they don't like to be called that. Nobody asked them what they want to be called. I'm very appreciative of you bringing the arch. I love the Book of Joy with His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. There was a film that was released recently. It aired for about 48 hours over the weekend, and Wendy and I watched it a couple of times because we were so filled with joy to see these two world leaders and the embodiment of compassion that we need so much now. We really need to dial up the heart and the heart resonance because, as the folks at the Heart Math Institute says, this heart resonance that you can actually measure about a meter diameter around your body improves social cohesion. We need to dial the heart up more. And thank you for bringing the arch, because this is one person that I have been naming, but he is no longer in this form. And it's so interesting. I'm one who is curious about noticing patterns. And it's interesting when big trees fall, like Archbishop Desmond Tutu, like bell hooks, like Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh, very close to each other. I believe in December 21 to January 22, all three of those beautiful, enlightened ones, wise ones who brought and continue to bring so much to the world in terms of unity consciousness and compassion consciousness. When those big trees fall, just like a forest would, other trees need to come up and create the canopy. And I'm glad you brought those ones in. May they journey well, because I remain inspired by their work. It's it, one more point around that. It's a little like I feel the work that I'm doing, Heather, in order to keep my feet on the ground, to stay regular sized. It's something that I drew from a talk of Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh. And it's not Jason only doing this work in my community. I am extending my candle for others to light their candle, just like someone extended a candle for me to light mine. And it only takes a pinprick of light to illuminate a whole space of darkness, just a pinprick. Now imagine if we are all shining our lights, lighting our candles, and they burn always. They burn through the legacy, through the teachings, when other people realize, yeah, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine like that, you know. And that was a singing moment.
That's beautiful, though. Yes, that's what we're capable of. And I often feel, and as you were referring earlier, Jason, I am so deeply grateful for this community and the
Yes,
light
yes.
and love and consciousness of this community. And I often have this image that we're these points of light in this web around the globe.
Mm.
And that as we hold and emanate that light and that love, it just spreads. And I love so, and in that sense, we're not alone. And part of what I so value, I feel so connected to you, even though we're halfway around the globe from each other. But we have that deep soul connection.
Yes,
And I think more and more we're finding that soul tribe
yes.
around the globe. But the other piece that I want to circle back to that I think is so important in what you were saying earlier is we are so many of us working to heal the generational and ancestral trauma, but that ultimately, and so much of your ancestral healing is about tapping into the ancestral wisdom,
Yes.
that light that can be there for us and light our own candle and keep the light burning. And I think part of what's important in this transition that we're in is honoring the wisdom of our ancestors, also honoring our incarnational lineage. So we not only have this epigenetic ancestral lineage we come from, but our incarnational lineage that's got its own experiences and its own gifts and its own trauma. But I do believe, as Jude Currivan has said, the brilliant cosmologist who I interviewed recently, that there is nothing lost, that there is nothing wrong in this journey that we've been in, even though we've really faced the shadow aspects of ourselves and humanity. She said it can be a path to deepening our coming back to love and empathy in deeper ways,
Mm.
so that again we can see that light of wisdom from the past that can come through and inform us, guide us in bringing the shadow into the light to heal, to move into these new ways of being that come then from more empathy, compassion, depth of knowing, and being in right relationship with each other to be co-creating a new world together.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful. Just pausing for that to land. I often ask folks, I've heard it somewhere and it resonates for me. We need to ask ourselves, are we running away from the dark or are we walking toward the light? And I don't think many of us make the space to go into self-inquiry. But we need to make the space and time to also, so what am I? What story am I believing? What stories am I carrying? But I have a sense, I have a feeling that I would love to explore a little bit more in another conversation with you, Heather, um, around this. I have reached out to some of the community that I'm active in with my work, and in order to maintain this important piece of psychological safety, confidentiality, I said, I'm going to be meeting with my older sister, Heather, and we might talk about some edgy things. Um, is it fine for me to share some of the story and we will maintain confidentiality. And it was beautiful. I think it pays credence towards the journey that we've been walking together with our people, that they've said yes emphatically with exclamation marks, because perhaps it's time to come out from behind closed doors and to share and to realize our common humanity. And then in this way, we can learn from each other, not just share the nice things and the nice meals we're eating at the fancy beaches on social media, but perhaps we could share these stories of overcoming, of learning how to find the light, from understanding some of the darkness, some of the challenges and burdens that we're down lineage from, many of us. It's important. And my wish for your community, our community, is that you find the right people to journey with. Not the ones who wear the right clothes and have the right trinkets. Listen from your heart and your other places of knowing. Listen for the integrity. Listen where that wisdom is coming from. And may you find those ones to journey with, together with, for your process. Not only for you, but also for the generations to come, the ancestors returning. That's an important piece. And perhaps from my side, dear Heather, with respect, I feel like there's an ellipsis there, and I want to honor the wisdom of that ellipsis, because even I don't even know what the plural of ellipsis is. I wish I'd listened more at school, but even an ellipsis has wisdom. There's more to come, and I'd love to have another conversation like this.
Dear Jason, before we stop, I just want to honor some of what you just said, because I think, and this is something I deeply respect in you and know that we share, the importance of that inner journey and the importance in this time of transition. We are moving, I believe, into a transformation, a metamorphosis into homo luminous ones, beings of light. But to do that, we need to be willing to dive deep within ourselves and face the shadow. And I also believe that part of our moving into our own wholeness and our into unity consciousness is honoring the wisdom of the dark, the wisdom in the mystery, in the not knowing, as well as the wisdom of the light, to bring ourselves back into wholeness, and to not, as we're moving through this transition, be in a spiritual bypass.
Yes,
But to actually do that deep inner work to begin our wholeness, to move into this transformation into new ways of being.
Thank you for naming that. And I might take out a highlighter and highlight, underscore, italicize what you had just said. And I bring a smile because it's important to meet those challenges with a little bit of levity. I also inherit a great deal of humor from my people. And so I sing sometimes when it's inappropriate to sing. And I laugh because it's important not to be overwhelmed, but we need to turn toward that. And then the wisdom of the little ones come in this moment. Just when the caterpillar thought its life was coming to an end, it became a butterfly. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. And the importance of the joy and the playfulness in the process,
Yeah.
which is part of what I loved about Desmond Tutu and the Dalai
Yes.
Lama. I remember seeing the Dalai Lama speak at the conference once, and all, of everyone was coming in with such seriousness, and he came in dancing and playful and making jokes. And how do we be in this journey with playfulness and joy. So thank you. Thank you, Jason. This has
Uh,
been wonderful to be in conversation with you.
Thank you so much, Heather. Thank you for the opportunity to add something, even if it's just one thing that those dialing in, make it easy. Just one thing that you might be able to take from this, then it would be mission accomplished. Just one thing. Yeah. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you. Thank you. And I want to thank this community because I so feel our heart connections and your presence here with us in this conversation. And Jason, we'll be doing many more conversations to come. Blessings to you and blessings and love to all of you.
Hmm.